Hi, sorry for the slight delay. I was having some technical issues, but I'm glad that I'm able to come live to you all now. So my name is Nicholas Pantlik. I was an intern and a volunteer with the High Atlas Foundation for the first 3 months of 2020. Unfortunately, my time with them was cut slightly short because of the coronavirus, but I'm very happy to be here today to speak with you all, whoever is tuned in, about some of my experiences with the High Atlas Foundation and the amazing work that they're doing in Morocco and beyond. So if I were to say what the general theme of my live video today is, it is talking about global warming. And you all know global warming with its disastrous effects around the world, not just in Morocco. But I want to highlight from my own time within the High Atlas Foundation, the amazing work that HAF does to combat global warming and to provide resources to communities and guidance to communities for how they can move forward through the difficulties caused by this phenomenon. So if anyone has any questions to start off with, I'd be happy to hear from you, to listen to you, to read off the questions, to answer them. But I guess to begin with, I can read some sections of an article I wrote earlier this year discussing global warming and its relationship with traditional farming practices in Morocco. So for me, I came into the High Atlas Foundation, my work with High Atlas Foundation, with very little to no background in the agricultural sector. Coming from living in a city in the United States, I didn't know anything about tree planting, its importance and significance within communities in rural areas, and all the nuances that go into planting trees, making sure that they're well cultivated, and making sure that this cultivation is successful. So I also want to say how thankful I am to everyone on the HAF team for allowing me the opportunity to travel around Morocco and visit with so many communities in rural areas, in cities. And so that's really where the inspiration for this article that I hope to soon read later on in this live video came from. It came from the people that I met on these journeys, their stories, and the amazing work that they're doing to find an ingenuity in the face of this hardship. And so if I were to say what I was really most struck by was the ability of farmers, of families, of communities to adapt to their circumstances, regardless of the resources that they had on hand, and regardless of the challenges that they faced. Because I think it's hard to say that all challenges were uniform. That is, many people suffered from challenges of different creation during this time of the changing environment, global warming, but nonetheless, people were able to find solutions and were working towards bettering their livelihoods, those of their families, and those of their communities. So if anyone has any questions before I begin, I would love to take them. I would love to hear what anyone has to say. And if not, I can certainly begin reading my article from earlier this year. So this article was, as I said, took primary inspiration from a trip I engaged in late January of this year, and it was a journey from Marrakesh, where the High Atlas Foundation is based, to the village of Gourrama in the Middle Atlas Mountains. And for me, that was not only amazing to see so much more of the country because I was able to traverse the middle part of Morocco through the high Atlas Mountains, see all the beautiful scenery there. But upon arrival, I was able to really feel like I was inducted into this community and see the ins and outs of how the farmers were working and what that work meant to them and their families as a reflection of traditional farming practices. So the title of my article is Where Tradition Meets Climate Change. And just to give a bit of an overview, it talks about how rural Moroccans, in reckoning with environmental degradation, turn to their source to restore productivity, tradition. And to break that down a little bit, so in reckoning with this environmental degradation, so whether that be desertification, whether that be other problems and difficulties posed by global warming, such as droughts or low harvests, low yields, farmers have turned to their source to restore their productivity. So traditional farming practices being this source. And so from there, I go on to discuss a little bit about how the journey came to pass, what it was like going to that journey. So 2 weeks ago, I set out with 3 of my colleagues from the High Atlas Foundation, half Marrakesh, to the village of Gourrama in the Moroccan Middle Atlas Mountains. Our journey from sunrise to sunset took us across rugged terrains and through communities of all sizes. I reveled in the beauty, both natural and created, that flashed by my window as we drove. Each of the passing images aroused in me the innocent excitement one feels at seeing a place for the first time, if even just for a moment. And I think that that well summarizes the feeling that I had going to this community, going to Gourrama from Marrakesh, because at that point I had traveled a little bit around in the Marrakesh region, but this was truly my first journey, my first foray into the other parts of Morocco, because as I'm sure almost all of you know, Morocco offers a rich environment that spans mountains to beaches to beautiful plains and everything in between. And so seeing some of that diversity really reminded me of what HAF is working to protect, what all of you who support HAF, what all of these farming communities are doing to protect their livelihoods, to protect their environment, to protect the beauty that's associated with this. And here I'm going to read a little bit of a description that I had of some of the images that I saw while I was driving on this sunrise to sunset journey. So, solitary concrete buildings partition the flowing green fields we slip through. Washed in fading emeralds, reds, pinks, and oranges, in profile, they appeared as stooped faces, their heavy-set brows animated by the soulful eyes of lit windows. They, witnesses to the passing lives and journeys of all, were solemn and resolute in their observation. Other constructions lay further back from the road, their glossy tin roofs peeking out from the verdant seas beside which they stood. The space between these oases of life and color did not feel hollow or maligned. It existed alongside the same expansiveness with which the blue sky above stretched up, out, and around us without limit. Upon arrival in Gourrama, we met with local representatives to drop off several hundred walnut, almond saplings at surrounding agricultural associations. These were only a fraction of the thousands of fruit trees we had carried with us, tightly packed in the back of our vehicle, beside our luggage. One such representative, Tariq Sadki, head of the local association, gave us a tour of the property where we would be staying. Among the many buildings of mud brick and reinforced straw we walked through, one room in particular was a source of pride for Tariq. Here he had curated a museum space over the past 20 years dedicated to the preservation of the region's history dating back a millennium, containing dozens of Amazigh, Arab, and French artifacts, from ancient tools and weapons to contemporary pieces of artwork. So I'm just going to pause there for a moment. Again, if anyone has any questions, I welcome them, and I would be more than happy to answer them and to elaborate on anything. But I want to talk a little bit about just what my arrival was like when I got into this village of Gourrama. It was later at night, but I think that it's telling that how my first interaction started with the community and with this village was that upon arrival, we went and distributed fruit trees, thousands of fruit trees to different local associations. And so by having that exposure, seeing some of the infrastructure that was already in place there, I think that I was able to have a greater appreciation for not only the enthusiasm surrounding HAF's programs within Gourrama, but also have a greater sense of what these trees meant to these farmers, what substantial change and what substantial benefit they could bring to the communities, the livelihoods, and the families within Gourrama. And then I go on to talk about my first morning in Gourrama. So this first morning in Gourrama, we distributed trees to 32 local farming families. Men, old and young alike, arrived wearing customary earthen-toned jalabas to stave off the morning's chill and protect their eyes from the rising sun. Excitedly, they hoisted their sapling bundles onto the backs of waiting donkeys with visible pride and purpose. In the late morning, we drove to a nearby town for further tree dissemination. There, I asked a handful of farmers about the effects of climate change on their livelihoods. In response, one man named Mustafa said that he had noticed a precipitous drop in rainfall, leading to a reduced land quality. This dearth of rain, he revealed, has also impeded communal efforts to expand cultivation range, stabilize income fluctuations, and sustain local apiaries and flocks. One solution that he and others have found for this issue has been to build dams and canals to divert water from rivers to their fields. Moreover, during a dry year, he explained, farmers must plant more drought-resistant staples of barley and corn, even when these crops do not provide enough self-sustaining income. So I think this first interaction with Mustafa that I had at the second site of tree dissemination was very impactful for me because I think on two fronts. So first, as I said in my article, he talked about some of the difficulties that farmers deal with. So namely, for him, it's the lack of rain access. So because rain is not falling at a rate that maybe it once did, or that it would in a normal year because it was a drier season, or it has been drier in general in the past few years, his livelihood has struggled, and the livelihoods of his peers have struggled as well. And so he's in considering how he can find a solution to this, he's created his own damming system and channel system to move water to his fields. And this is certainly not a modern idea or a modern undertaking. This has been within the agricultural community of Gourrama, within the agricultural community of Morocco for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and within part of farming as well for just as long. And so by returning to this practice in the face of this issue, global warming, which has not always been something that farmers have to deal with, it's yielded results that would not have been possible without it. It's allowed farmers like Mustafa to remain successful, to remain to stay afloat even when he doesn't get enough rain. And so thank you. My rings are just down below. Sorry if it's a little bit distracting with my setup. But as I was saying, the drought, these drought conditions, beyond impacting the crops that are being cultivated at that moment, also change the crops that can be cultivated, because certain crops require more water than others. So if that water is no longer available, farmers must turn to the crops that are first affordable to them, but also crops that they think will have a higher yield. So if conditions aren't ideal, what crops will survive the longest? And then continuing on, this is recounting a conversation that I had with another farmer named Hassan. So similarly, another farmer named Hassan recounted that since the 2008 flood, all of the almond trees have been dying in the region. Because of this difficult reality, farmers seek more environmentally resilient varieties of trees that will flower later in the season during a time of greater rainfall. Unrelated to climate change, Hassan expressed that a lack of fundamental agricultural training has also been responsible for diminishing yields. He believes that these farming practices, wherein people plant their trees and leave them without care, are a consequence of this deficient education. And I think that this also struck me as well, because seeing that maybe there's this desire to be successful, to find success in your farming practices, but you don't have the base of training, you don't have the base of people informing you. So you want to, you have this goal. You have this goal of being successful within your farming, but you just don't know how to manage this, how to handle it. I think that's again where I saw a place where HAF has stepped in and will continue to step in for Gourrama and for communities of similar size and stature. And I also think that that goes back to the issues related to dryness in the region, because while at times it does get enough rain, there are certainly moments, as in recent years, where due to floods, such as the 2008 flood, trees have been dying, and there's no explanation for it. So that's why farmers are so keen on continuing to study varieties that flower well, continuing to test which varieties will be most successful. And then continuing on within the article, so this is after visiting a few communities. At midday, after all farmers had received their trees, we led a discussion on communal wants and needs for the future. Through this conversation, we learned that rural Moroccan farmers often struggle to find the right domestic markets for their products, toiling to make enough money even in plentiful years. The majority of their crops are exported raw to European countries to be processed and sold at higher prices for the benefit of large corporations instead of for their original growers. Moroccans want access to the international organic market, but rarely can because they lack adequate resources to effectively plant, grow, harvest, process, and distribute their produce. Some farmers have taken this challenge head-on, successfully managing the seed-to-sale value chain themselves. In this regard, a few in Gourrama have made moderate gains processing local olives into olive oil. So this, I think, was perhaps the most striking piece of information I learned during my time in Gourrama. So there's as many of you know, I'm sure there is a significant drop off between the viability and the marketability of organic crops and crops that are not certified organic. This is not to say that not organic certified crops aren't desired and do not have a market for them, but it's certainly true that when crops are certified organically and on an international level, and that can be shown and publicized, they can sell for much more money, and they have a much broader appeal in general. And I think that it's also very disheartening, I think, to hear about how even though farmers know that this exists, they just don't have the resources right now to put any sort of certification measures into action and put any efforts to substantially continue to cultivate their livelihoods organically, and to also distribute them beyond just the regions where they're working. So instead of just bringing their products to local markets or maybe the nearest big city. So I think in the case of Gourrama, that's likely Fez or another city in that region. And so if they can only go to one city by the time they try to get to another place where their crops could sell, the crops have gone bad. The crops are no longer at the very high level that they were when they were harvested. Then that truly is a loss. But I think that's the fact that despite these difficult situations, farmers continue to work to find ways around this, to regardless of their own means, to work with one another, to work with foundations and organizations like the High Atlas Foundation, to try to take control of this value chain, the seed to sale value chain. Then I think it just shows how resilient and how motivated these farmers are. And so this is continuing on about the group discussion that went on just after midday in Gourrama with a large group of farmers. So beyond this, the group discussion brought forth two final issues: the inadequacy of young children's school facilities and sweeping rural joblessness. Employment outside the field of agriculture is difficult to come by in this area, and the only occasional jobs available are in animal husbandry and beekeeping. Subsequently, we emphasize Sorry, let me just take this question from Saeed. Thank you for the question, Saeed. I miss you guys too, all in Morocco, and I hope that I can be back very soon. So his question is, what was your expectation for the Moroccan villages before your start in the visits? What were the challenges that the communities in the villages I visited face? So that's a great question. I think that I guess it changed a little bit as my first couple weeks with the High Atlas Foundation went on. So I started out my time with HAF, working doing some activities in environmental education in and around Marrakesh, and so I got a little bit of a taste of what the work is like. But going to Gourrama was my first time staying over at a community and going on a longer trip. So I really did not come in with a lot of expectations, but overall I was completely blown away, not only by the people and how motivated they were to work in spite of the challenges that they were facing, but also just of the amazing diversity and the amazing the amazing beauty that is present in Morocco. And with this in mind, I think that what also struck me was how the powerful need that exists to protect this beauty and to help these farmers protect their livelihoods going forward. Because I think that it's amazing that these communities are able to thrive in the way that they do, and they should be protected. They should be supported so that they can continue to bring forth the livelihoods that they've been working towards and their families have been working towards for the past 100 years, past hundreds of years. And so to go back to a few of what the challenges that these communities face. As I mentioned earlier, for those of you who were not on the stream, for the beginning part of the discussion, mainly the challenges that people in Gourrama face and people in the surrounding area face are challenges related to water security. So this means if there's a drought or if there is a situation where water is more scarce than it typically is for these communities, then their livelihoods suffer. Because when you're working in an agricultural setting, water is obviously is essential. It plays a huge role in whether or not first of all whether or not you're successful, but then second of all what you're able to cultivate. So if there isn't enough water, as I said, farmers must turn to staples of barley and corn. So these are crops that have been growing that these communities have been growing for the past 100 years, past 50 years, in response to demand for them. But now, because the market is so saturated with barley and corn, they're no longer able to make a living off of just their sale alone. And so now they're transitioning back to endemic fruit tree varieties such as carob, argan, and so many others, in almond, and I guess particularly for Gourrama, it's they're focused on nut varieties, so walnut and almond saplings, and I think that it is really telling that despite these challenges, these people still want to figure out a way to engineer themselves for themselves more success in their livelihoods, and figure out a way that they can work around the difficulties posed by global warming, by large market buyers, by lack of resources for certification, and also by competition for the raw export of their products to European countries. Because the key I found was that if we, and I'm using we in terms of the efforts of the Atlas Foundation, the efforts of those who support similar foundations, the efforts of those who support these farmers, if we were able to figure out a way to bring the value chain to them. So instead of sending the raw exports abroad, sending them to places where they may be processed elsewhere. So they're being processed outside of the country. They aren't being processed by the farmers themselves, because these are very high quality products. They're often grown organically, whether or not they're certified. But these people are putting tremendous care, tremendous effort into creating something that is nourishing, that makes people feel good. But if it's not able to be processed to be marketed to a broader audience by these farmers, then so much value is being lost. And that's not for a lack of trying on the part of the farmers. They're certainly trying. They're trying to ameliorate this every day. Hi, Toby. Okay, so and thank you, Saeed, for the question. I enjoyed answering it. So Toby asks, hi. My question is not about climate change, but about your experience volunteering with HAF, as a few of my students might be interested in volunteering too. Could you give me a rough estimate of the cost of living per month as a foreign volunteer? So that's a great question, Toby. I'd be happy to answer it. I don't exactly have an estimate off the top of my head, but I think that it's very and I'm not sure where you're coming from, but it's very easy. It's relatively easy to live live and volunteer abroad with half. And half provides materials for housing, helps you figure out different places to go, and so they're very supportive in that manner. If I were to say the biggest cost, and this also depends on the situation. So it's if you're on your own, as I was in Marrakesh, it's going to be more expensive. If you're renting an apartment with 2 or 3 other people, but I think that I've heard that for apartments in the Marrakesh area, you can rent them for right around I think maybe for 6 months or for 3 months. I can't give a good estimate of this. My situation was a little bit unique in this way because I had some scheduling difficulties. But if I were to give an estimate per week, you can probably spend right around $5 per day on food. On the high end, maybe if you want to have a very nice meal, it's going to be $10 per day. And so that's you can probably spend less than $50 per week on food. And then that's also varies depending on where you get your food from. But anyway, thank you for your question, and I'm sorry I can't give you a little bit more info off the top of my head. So I guess I got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but anyway, I was really struck that there are challenges in these communities, but the ability of farmers of farming families to overcome them was what I took away from my experience more so than the challenges themselves, because I don't think these challenges are necessarily unique within themselves, but the way that Moroccans in rural areas are able to respond to them, to figure out a way to get past them is very unique. So continuing on, I think I stopped in the middle of a paragraph, so I may just begin from there, just so if someone had not been on the video beforehand, to give them a bit of a context. So this is within a broader group discussion that we led in Gourrama about generally what are the wants and needs of the community for the future. So this group discussion brought up 2 final issues. First, the inadequacy of young children's school facilities, and second, sweeping rural joblessness. Employment outside the field of agriculture is difficult to come by. It's difficult to come by in this area, and the only occasional jobs available are in animal husbandry, so taking care of animals, especially sheep and other animals like that, and beekeeping. Subsequently, we emphasize that half will remain a part of their entire development process, from the distribution of seeds to the certification, processing, and sale of produce, assisted by the USAID Farmer-to-Farmer program. To conclude, we completed a ceremonial tree planting, fertilizing the saplings freshly laid to rest, with the traditional practice of spreading ash on the topsoil to deliver vital nutrients to the tree roots. So this was another example of a traditional practice. So spreading ash on tree roots, that's natural. That isn't chemical based. That increases growth viability and cultivation for trees. And I also want to just say a little bit about the USAID Farmer-to-Farmer program. For the past about year and a half, the Hyatlas Foundation has worked with USAID Morocco and the USAID mission in Morocco on many fronts. So first, they work with USAID by bringing in farmer-to-farmer volunteers from the United States from the UK primarily to Morocco to provide their expertise in many different disciplines. So these often are for people who may not have access to this type of information right away, but these people can provide business plan estimates. They can provide technical expertise in, for example, nursery management, water system management. So people who spent their careers or have careers in irrigation and the like. And so I think that it's been very impactful for the High Atlas Foundation to be this bridge between these expert volunteers and Moroccans across the country, allowing them to really reach their full potential, because there is so much potential within Morocco, within these communities. There's so much motivation, and to have access to these volunteers has really made a huge difference in the lives of many Moroccans. And then my article continues. Following a typical late Moroccan lunch, we travel to a 20-hectare communal farm on an immense plain bordered by low rolling mountains. It seemed an impossibility, with the wind whipping through our scant jackets, clawing roughly against our flushed cheeks, that anything could flourish amongst such tumult. Yet we learned that adversity and perseverance, like that which we had seen throughout our visit, was acutely woven into the very essence of the place we stood. This project was created by the local agricultural cooperative, with a government land grant providing jobs for unemployed individuals lacking viable professional prospects and keeping them from succumbing to the tide of rural emigration. So this is I thought that this was really amazing, this project that's going on near Gourrama, and also I thought that it was again another example of how the people of Gourrama identified an issue that they're facing. So this is joblessness, and then also rural emigration, and they found a way to engineer a solution to it. So while this isn't necessarily a more traditional solution like some of those that I've mentioned, it certainly shows how the ingenuity of people within Gourrama, the people within the Moroccan Middle Atlas, the Moroccans in rural areas, Moroccans in general, to recognize problems, to see needs that exist, and then to figure out a way where they can address them, and they can find positive solutions to this. And again, at any point, if someone has a question, I'd be more than happy to take them, whether about the article, whether about my time with HAF, whether about anything. I'd be happy to do my best to answer if anyone has a question that they would like to ask. And then continuing on, I go on to talk a little bit about this ingenuity. So ingenuity in the face of hardship is commonplace within this community and the thousands of others in the high and middle Atlas Mountains. Climate change is just the latest challenge they face. Oftentimes, people find themselves returning to tradition when they encounter problems of modern creation. On our last day in Gourrama, we came upon a small standalone corn processing facility where hydropower is used to churn grain into flour. This generational, self-sustaining practice has yielded years of profit for the community. Its industrious design and the myriad of aforementioned examples serve as remembrances that, despite an ever-changing world, those who work in symbiosis with their environment will have their dedication reflected and returned. So I think that seeing this processing facility on our last day in Gourrama brought many of the ideas that I was having throughout my time there, throughout my visit there, together. So for one, it showed me that while there's practices such as building dams and putting ash in topsoil that are more directly related to farming, there's also processing related designs, related efforts that reflect traditional values or reflect traditional practices. So like this corn processing facility. And I think that seeing that in person and seeing the care with which people were processing the corn, were going about trying to make the most of the situation and take control of the value chain themselves was very impactful for me, and continues to be very impactful, because it shows that even if these people don't have access, these farmers, these farming families don't have access to really expensive equipment that bigger corporations in Europe and bigger growers might have access to. They still are so motivated to bring the processing to their own cultivation when it's possible, and by turning to sources that have always served them, that continue to serve them now during this difficult time of environmental degradation and climate change. It shows that they're ready to adapt, that they're willing to adapt, and that the infrastructure to do this is right before them, exists within their communities as they are now. So that's all from my article now. And so if anyone has any last questions, I would certainly welcome them. If anyone is curious about anything, I'd be happy to talk about it. I'll just wait here for a couple minutes. If anyone is thinking about a question, I don't want to cut you guys off or cut you short if you're considering something. But if not, my name's Nicholas Pantelick. As I said at the beginning, I was a volunteer with the Heightless Foundation. I had an amazing time in Marrakesh, in Morocco, with all the people that I met there at the organization, with all the people that I met in communities like Gourrama. It was truly a life-changing experience to be able to go to Morocco and to meet all these people doing unparalleled things, and learn about something that beforehand I knew nothing of, and now I've come to care about deeply. So if no one has any questions, or if anyone has any questions for the future, please do not hesitate to reach out to either the Heightless Foundation for my information, or you can go and reach out directly to me. My name is Nick Pantelick on Facebook. Send me a message. I would love to hear from anyone. So that is it's spelled like this. I'm from San Francisco, California, in the United States, and I would love to hear from you and hear about your own stories working through climate change, your own stories of being in Morocco, any questions you might have about my experience. It would be a pleasure to answer them and to help you or guide you in any way that I can. Well, I think that's about it for me. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope you have an excellent rest of your day. That's all from me. Thank you very much.